June 14th, 2022. A warm summer afternoon I thought would be nothing more than laughter, ice, and a few cups of lemonade on our front lawn. But little did I know, by sundown, I'd have police sirens outside my house, because of my neighbor. Yes, you heard that right. My neighbor called the cops, on my son's lemonade stand. Now before you shake your head and think, really? Over lemonade? Trust me, I thought the same thing. But what happened after that call? Oh, it turned into something I'll never forget. Because the first customer to step out of that squad car wasn't just an officer. It was the chief of police. And here's where things get interesting. When the chief made his move, the entire block froze. My neighbor's smug little grin disappeared in an instant. And my son? Well, let's just say he learned more about courage and kindness in 10 minutes than some adults learn in a lifetime. But let me back up for a second, because to really understand how we got here, you need to know who I am, and why that neighbor had been waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate us. Stick with me. This story isn't just about lemonade. It's about pride, pettiness, and a revenge that was served ice cold, with a twist of lemon. Oh, and before we dive in, if you love true suspense and stories where justice finds its way back around, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this one ends. I'm Mark, a father of one stubborn but big-hearted 10-year-old boy named Ethan. And if you've ever been a parent, you'll understand this. Kids don't dream small. They dream loud, they dream big, and they believe they can take on the world with a cardboard sign and a pitcher of lemonade. That summer afternoon, Ethan had one mission. He wanted to save enough money to buy a new baseball glove. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech. Just a glove, so he could play ball with his friends at the park. To him, that glove wasn't just leather and stitches. It was freedom, pride, and the proof that he could earn something on his own. So we set it up. A simple stand, wooden table, bright yellow poster with hand-drawn letters, and a plastic jug filled with lemonade that we squeezed ourselves. Ethan was bouncing with excitement, yelling, "Lemonade!" Fresh lemonade, at every jogger, biker, or dog walker who passed by. And at first it was perfect. Strangers smiled, neighbors waved, and Ethan's little cup of lemonade became more than a drink. It was a reminder of childhood innocence. But not everyone saw it that way. See, there's always that one person, the kind who never smiles, never waves, and somehow finds a problem in every ounce of joy around them. For us, that was Mr. Thompson, our next-door neighbor. Retired, bitter, always trimming his lawn with military precision, like he was preparing for a parade that never came. He hated noise, hated kids, and if a leaf dared to land on his driveway, you could almost hear him groan from 3 houses away. I noticed him standing by his window that afternoon, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Ethan was too busy pouring drinks to notice. But me, I knew that look. I'd seen it before, and I could almost feel the storm brewing. At first, I brushed it off. It's just a lemonade stand, I thought. What's the worst that could happen? But that's the thing about people like Thompson. They don't need a good reason. All they need is an excuse. And that day, my son's happiness was the excuse he had been waiting for. Of course, I didn't know that then. I didn't know he was already reaching for his phone, already dialing a number, already planning to humiliate a 10-year-old in front of the whole neighborhood. If I had known, maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe. But instead, I just smiled at my son, not realizing the shadow that was about to fall over our sunny little stand. The first hour of that lemonade stand felt like magic. Ethan was in his element, chatting, laughing, handing out cups with sticky fingers and a grin bigger than his face. Every time a neighbor dropped $1 in the jar, he looked at me like he had just conquered the world. And honestly, I couldn't stop smiling either. But in the corner of my eye, I noticed him. Thompson, my neighbor, watching, pacing, arms crossed like he was guarding state secrets. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself he'll calm down. He's just grumpy. But I should have known better. Because with Thompson, grumpy wasn't a mood. It was a lifestyle. The crowd started to grow. A couple of kids from down the street came by. Then a jogger stopped, sweating, grateful for a cold drink. Even Mrs. Lopez, who never leaves her porch without her 2 yappy chihuahuas, walked over and bought 2 cups. Ethan's face lit up every time. But with each new customer, I could feel Thompson's blood pressure rising. He came out once, pretending to check his mailbox. He came out again, sweeping his already spotless driveway. And finally, he muttered loud enough for me to hear. "This isn't a circus. It's a neighborhood. You can't just run a business without a permit. A permit for a kid's lemonade stand." I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't. Because I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't joking. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who seems to thrive on other people's misery? Someone who deep down doesn't just dislike joy but feels threatened by it? That was Thompson. And Ethan's stand was his perfect target. Ethan, of course, didn't hear any of this. He was too busy counting coins, already planning how many shifts it would take to afford that glove. To him, life was simple. Sell lemonade, buy glove, play ball. To Thompson, life was a battlefield, and my kid had just crossed enemy lines. I went inside to grab more ice. I swear I wasn't gone more than 3 minutes. But when I stepped back outside, Ethan looked nervous. His smile had faded. "Dad," he whispered. "Mr. Thompson said he's calling someone." I looked across the yard, and there he was, phone in hand, voice low, eyes darting at us like we were criminals caught in the act. I felt my stomach drop. No way, I thought. He wouldn't actually call the cops over this, would he? But then I saw it. The little nod. The way he turned his back and walked inside, like his job was done. And that's when I knew. He had done it. Now let me tell you. Time slows down when you realize someone has declared war on your child's happiness. I felt a mix of anger, fear, and, believe it or not, shame. What would this do to Ethan? Would they actually shut him down? Fine us? Scare him into never trying again? And then, the sound. At first faint, then louder. Sirens. My heart sank. The customers froze. Ethan clutched my arm, eyes wide. And there it was. The police car turning onto our street. Flashing lights bouncing off every house, every window, every watching neighbor. I could see Thompson at his window again, grinning. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd crushed a child's dream with one phone call. But what he didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the person stepping out of that car wasn't just a cop. It was the chief of police. And the moment his boots hit the pavement, everything changed. The police car stopped right in front of our house, lights still flashing, sirens now quiet, and for a moment, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Ethan gripped my hand so tight I could feel his little nails digging into my skin. His face, wide-eyed, pale, wasn't the face of a kid selling lemonade anymore. It was the face of a kid who thought he was in trouble. And then the door opened. Out stepped a tall man in uniform. Not a rookie, not a patrol cop. No, this was Chief Daniels, the chief of police himself. The silver badge on his chest caught the sunlight, and I swear, in that instant, even the air grew heavier. Across the street, Thompson's curtains twitched. I could practically see him smiling from behind the glass, convinced this was his victory parade. The kids in the crowd shuffled nervously. Mrs. Lopez tugged her dogs closer, whispering, "Ay, Dios mío." The chief walked slowly toward us. His boots crunched against the asphalt with a steady rhythm. Step, 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 like a drumbeat of judgment. His eyes scanned the stand, the cups, the sign, then down to Ethan, who was half hidden behind my leg. "Afternoon," he said finally, his voice deep and commanding. "Who's in charge here? Now here's the thing. Every instinct in me wanted to step forward, shield my son, and say, 'It's me. I'll take whatever you've got.' But before I could, Ethan piped up in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from him. 'I am, sir.' The chief tilted his head, studying him. The silence stretched on just long enough for my heart to start pounding. Thompson must have been rubbing his hands together like some cartoon villain by now. Finally, the chief looked at me. His expression was unreadable. Stone-faced, like a man who'd seen it all. And then he said, "Mind if I take a closer look?" What could I say? I nodded. My throat was dry. He stepped past me, leaned down, and examined the lemonade setup like he was inspecting evidence at a crime scene. The jug, the cups, the hand-drawn sign that read lemonade, 50 cents. He muttered. "Interesting operation you've got here." Ethan swallowed hard. I put a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Sir," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's just a kid's lemonade stand. He's not—" The chief held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. That was the moment my stomach twisted. I thought, this is it. He's going to shut us down. He's going to make an example of us, right here in front of everyone. The crowd behind us shifted uneasily. You could feel the tension thick in the air. And through the corner of my eye, I saw Thompson step out onto his porch now. Arms folded, a smug smirk stretched across his face. He was ready to watch us crumble. The chief finally stood up straight, looked right at Ethan and asked, "How much for a cup?" I blinked. Ethan blinked. Even the neighbors blinked. The words didn't register at first. 50 cents? Ethan squeaked, and that's when the chief reached into his pocket. Slowly, deliberately. He pulled out his wallet, flipped it open, and plucked out a bill. Not a 1, not a 5, a 20. He placed it gently in Ethan's jar and said, "Then I'll take the first cup." The crowd gasped. Ethan's jaw dropped. My knees nearly buckled with relief. But the best part? The look on Thompson's face. His little celebration had just turned into a funeral march. And the story was only getting started. The $20 bill landed in that jar with a soft thud. But to me it sounded like thunder. Ethan's eyes went wide, like he'd just been handed the crown jewels. "For real," he whispered. The chief gave him a small nod. That kind of nod only someone with quiet authority can give. "For real," he said. "Now how about that lemonade?" The crowd erupted with nervous laughter. You could feel the tension dissolve, like air hissing out of a balloon. Mrs. Lopez clapped her hands. The jogger gave a whistle. Even the kids on their bikes shouted, "Woo!" But across the street, Thompson froze. His smirk collapsed into something bitter, like he'd just swallowed spoiled milk. His arms dropped to his sides. He wasn't smiling anymore. Ethan scrambled, nearly spilling half the jug as he poured the chief a cup. His hands were shaking, but his grin was back. He handed it over like it was the most important drink he'd ever served in his life. The chief raised the cup, took a slow sip, and smacked his lips. Then he said, loud enough for every soul on that block to hear, "Now that is the best lemonade I've had in years." The crowd cheered. Ethan puffed out his chest. And me? I was trying hard not to laugh at the sight of Thompson standing there like a statue, his grand plan crumbling in front of him. But the chief wasn't done. He turned toward Thompson's house, eyes narrowing just enough. "You know," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet street, "I got a call about an illegal operation happening here. Can you believe that?" The crowd chuckled. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." The chief shook his head. "If running a lemonade stand is illegal, then I guess half this town ought to be in jail, including me when I was his age." Boom, like a hammer striking an anvil. Every adult there remembered their own childhood. Bike rides, ice cream trucks, lemonade stands, and every eye turned to Thompson, who was now shifting awkwardly, trying to retreat into the shadows of his porch. The chief wasn't being cruel. He didn't need to be. His words were enough. They cut clean, sharper than any fine or ticket ever could. Then, something unexpected happened. A man from down the block stepped forward, pulled out $1 and said, "Make that 2 cups for me." Another followed, and another. Before I knew it, there was a line forming in front of Ethan's little table. The chief stood back, arms crossed, watching with a satisfied grin. He had flipped the script. What was supposed to be a humiliation had turned into a celebration, and Ethan, he was glowing, counting coins, handing out cups, laughing again. You could practically see his confidence growing with each sale. Now, I won't lie. Part of me wanted to march across the street and rub it in Thompson's face. To say, how does it feel to lose to a 10-year-old with a pitcher of lemonade? But I didn't, because honestly, I didn't need to. The look on his face was victory enough. The chief finished his cup, set it down, and gave Ethan a pat on the shoulder. "Keep up the good work, son. This town needs more kids like you." Ethan beamed. The crowd clapped, and just like that, what started as a petty act of spite became one of the proudest moments of my son's young life. But don't think for a second the story ends there, because as sweet as that moment was, Thompson wasn't done, and neither was I. The sun was lower in the sky now, casting long golden shadows across the street. What started as a simple lemonade stand had turned into something much bigger. My son was at the center of it all. Busy, proud, and for the first time, truly believing in himself. The jar was filling fast. Quarters, bills, even a 5 here and there. The same neighbors who used to just wave politely were now lining up, cheering him on, swapping jokes as they waited for their turn. It was as if the whole block had decided in unspoken agreement to stand against bitterness and choose joy instead. And standing behind him, I felt relief, but also something deeper. I felt vindicated, because across the street, Mr. Thompson's show had ended before it began. He lingered on his porch a while longer, trying to save face, but it was useless. The chief's $20 bill had crushed his argument flat, and every single person saw it. You could almost see the steam rising off him as laughter and conversation spilled across the block. At one point, his wife tugged at his arm, whispering something sharp, and the two of them slipped back inside, curtains drawn, lights off. Just like that, the self-appointed neighborhood judge and jury had been silenced. Did I feel bad for him? For a second, maybe. But then I looked at my son's face, at the pride swelling in his little chest, and I thought, no, he brought this on himself. The chief didn't linger long. He had made his point, finished his drink, and left with a satisfied nod. But the memory of his presence stayed like a badge of honor stamped on that stand. As the evening wore on, the crowd dwindled. Neighbors carried home their empty cups with smiles, tossing in a little extra change on the way out. By the time we packed up, Ethan's jar was overflowing. More money than he ever expected. Enough for his glove. Enough for new baseballs. Enough, honestly, for a whole lot more. But what mattered most wasn't the cash. It was the look in his eyes. He had started the day as a boy with a dream, but he ended it as a boy who knew what he was capable of. He had faced down fear, humiliation, and the weight of a neighbor's spite, and he came out stronger. As we carried the table back inside, Ethan looked up at me and asked, "Dad, why did Mr. Thompson hate it so much?" And I paused. Because how do you explain to a child that sometimes people don't hate what you do? They hate the joy you find in doing it? I crouched down, met his eyes, and said, "Some people don't like seeing others happy, son. But the important thing is, don't ever let that stop you. If you believe in something good, you keep going, even if someone tries to shut you down." He nodded, serious as ever. Then he grinned. "Next week, can we do it again?" I laughed, ruffled his hair, and said, "Oh, you bet we can." And in that moment, I realized something. Thompson had lost more than a battle. He had lost control. Because once a kid learns they can stand tall against pettiness and spite, there's no going back. Revenge doesn't always come with shouting or fists or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with laughter, lemonade, and the sight of a man realizing he'll never win against a child's joy. When I finally sat down that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, I replayed the entire day in my mind. The laughter, the flashing lights, the $20 bill, the look on Thompson's face, it all circled back, like scenes from a movie I couldn't stop watching. And the truth hit me. This wasn't just about lemonade. It wasn't even just about my son. It was about something bigger. We live in a world where small joys get stomped on too easily. where bitterness sometimes drowns out laughter, where people like Thompson, people who can't stand to see others shine, try to pull everyone else into their darkness. But that day, the tables turned. And not because I shouted louder, or fought harder, or stooped to his level. No. It turned because one act of kindness, one unexpected ally, and one brave little kid refused to back down. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always look like payback. Sometimes it looks like a smile you can't erase, a memory you can't spoil, and a victory so public that silence becomes your enemy's punishment. Ethan got his glove, he got his pride, and me, I got the sweetest revenge of all, knowing that Thompson has to live with the fact that the very cops he called showed up, not to shut us down, but to buy a cup of lemonade. Now, here's what I want to leave you with. The next time someone tries to crush your joy, remember this story. Stand tall, smile bigger, because nothing rattles the bitter more than watching you succeed in spite of them. And now I've got to ask you, what would you have done if your neighbor had called the cops on your child? Would you have confronted them, stayed quiet, or maybe like me, let the universe serve the justice cold with a twist of lemon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I can't wait to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this tale of unexpected revenge and sweet justice, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next story I've got coming your way, because if today proved anything, it's this. Sometimes the bitter get burned, and sometimes the sweetest victories come in the smallest cups.